Hi, my name is Andy Vanzandt. I'm a professional board game developer, and I'm taking a look at older board game titles through the lens of modern development. Uh, and it's important to keep in mind that what I'm saying is not generally intended to be criticism, but more to be comparing and contrasting choices that were made in the past versus what you might do if you were releasing this product as a more modern design. Today I'm taking a look at Fjords by Franz Benoit Delange and published by Rio Grande Games. The last printing of this, I think, was in 2006, so it's been out of print for a while. And before you think that you'll go and pick up a copy for cheap, this costs way too much on the secondary market currently. So let's look at the packaging first. We've got a border around the sides, which I feel like I mentioned almost every video is indicative of an older game or an older company, perhaps. And so I'd be inclined to do it full bleed and probably wrap the edges. I would also probably change the illustration. Usually, I want a certain level of excitement in the illustration. You want to have the viewer project themselves onto the situation or the person on the cover, and so it grabs them a little bit better. And so the illustration here is good, but I think it could be improved in that regards. We're also missing the designer's name, which is odd for a hobby market board game. Usually that's a pretty automatic inclusion. The sides of the box have the basic information, and that's on all the sides, which is nice. The back does have the author's name, has a very reasonable blurb, like the length is not too long, and it's got the contents in short, and then it's got a very good in-action component shot, so I have no problems with the back of the box. If we take a look inside the box, we've got a rule booklet. This is actually a single sheet rule book, just laid out like a booklet. And I actually like this rule booklet a lot. It's a fairly simple game, so it's harder to mess up, but they did a good job here in being concise but still conveying everything that needed to be conveyed. We've got an outline of what's going on and the preparation before we get into the actual turn structure, and then the scoring and the new round at the end. So there's pretty much nothing I would change about this rule sheet. Inside the box, we have an insert. I've mentioned before that most inserts are designed to protect components during shipping and to lower box rattle. So that does its job. And when people say, "Oh, I threw out the insert," it's like, cool, it already did its job. A lot of people have this weird expectation that it's supposed to be a storage solution after the fact, and that's just not the case for most inserts. So this is a good insert, and it's nice that it has colors, has a little bit of added presentation value when somebody opens the box. Um, so our other components here, we've got tiles, and these tiles, they did a good job of the graphic design on it. You can see that the terrain has basically a halfway point on each side so that it lines up nicely and looks good when you've got it laid out on the table. Um, the in addition to that, there's little illustrations. So I don't know if all of the tiles are unique, but a lot of them are. They've got little added bonuses, so it looks a little bit nicer. Um, there are uh, there are backs to these tiles, and that's good. Uh, the tiles have a linen texture to them, which I don't like. So linen texture adds perceived value, but broadly speaking, is a detriment to a component. Linen texture will show wear more often and costs more to do. And people think that it's actually linen. It's not. It's just the texture. Uh, and usually, when you have linen texture, you have a semi-gloss or a gloss coating on it to show it off. And that means when you've got something like this, where it spends most of its time on the table, uh, it can have a little bit of a glare to it. Uh, Sometimes that can obscure information. That's not a huge concern, but it is a small thing. And when you add that to the additional wear, the fact that the component wears quicker, I don't like doing linen texture on things unless they are going to be held in your hand consistently or handled a whole lot, because then the perceived value of that linen texture is much more noticeable. You've got the tactile thing going. and you don't have those detriments. So there are definitely points at which I think linen texture is good. That's not what I would do here. I would have a matte texture on these tiles, and that's my only real complaint there. Uh, so we've also got there. This is a two-player game. So there's two different colors, and they made a good choice here. Even somebody with monochromatic color blindness could pick out the two different colors here. And it's nice that these aren't just generic houses; that they've got a little bit of flair to them. Uh, the other player markers are more standard discs, and they are totally fine for their purpose. But they're not adding a whole lot of wow factor to anything. Um, so a lot of times when I'm talking about these games, I talk a whole lot about product development and not a whole lot about mechanical development. That's because these are usually games that already have an audience and have already established what they're trying to do and are already good games, right? So Acquire and Tigris and Euphrates, I'm not going to say a whole lot about the mechanical development or things that I would change for those because they already do what they're supposed to do. Timber Tom, I mentioned that it should be a shorter game and probably have a smaller board to facilitate that, but I didn't go too much in depth into that. This one I want to talk a little bit more about that because there are two things that I think could be improved on this. The first one is there is a first to act advantage in this game. So there are 3 rounds. Each round you'll take turns laying out tiles onto the board and optionally placing one of your farms onto the tile that you just laid out, sort of like Carcassonne. After the tiles are laid out, you'll take turns placing these field markers, and the field marker has to be next to one of your farms or next to another field marker. So basically, you'll have these lines of fields basically leading out from your farms. And the idea is that you're trying to rope off territory, sort of like in That's My Fish or Go, because other people can't put their markers where you already have yours. So you're trying to kind of cordon off an area, and then after you've gotten all those cordons off, you do this thing where you fill out the areas that you kind of claimed, and then that's how you score. And you'll do that 3 times during the game. The problem is that the way it works is the last person to place a tile is going to be second to act for placing out field markers. Um, so you'll place a tile, then the next person will start placing field markers, and then you'll place a field marker, and back and forth. And a lot of times you'll have situations where somebody is able to just completely lock somebody off of uh, getting anything with those early placements. So there's a really big first to act advantage there, and on top of that, there's because of the way the tiles are arranged and the placement is set up, um, there's only a few interesting choices with each of the placement phases. So after you get that initial like kind of fighting for areas and stuff and trying to figure out what's more valuable to you and what's less valuable, there about half or more of the fields you place are just kind of filling out areas for scoring. Um, so the first thing I would do is probably have more tiles, which would allow for more maneuvering of fields before it kind of goes into that lockdown, who cares mode. And then I would do something to offset that first actor advantage. Um, my first inclination would probably be to do a bounce on the actions. So having one person take one action, the next person take two, and then two, 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 back and forth. But it might not need even more than that. You only have 4 farms that you can place, so you can imagine having a farm being mostly locked off very early can be a really big hit, and so that those early actions matter so much that even if you have a draft bounce going on, it might need a little bit more to offset things. But those are the two things I would look at. I would look at adding more tiles, maybe especially ones that are very accessible, so that there's more potentially maneuvering around and vying for areas, and then I would look to fix that first actor advantage. Um, but otherwise, it's a decent game. It's a two-player game. It plays quickly. It is mostly tactical rather than strategic, and uh, changes to summarize. I would make this box a little bit more exciting, probably full bleed. Uh, I would make the tiles be matte texture, and I would probably add more tiles and also look to offset that first player advantage. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you later.